Hi guys, so this video is looking at your recipe of doing a chicken stir fry, and the reason why we're doing this particular recipe is to look at a number of skills and techniques. Of particular, we're looking at the jardiniere technique, so hopefully you've already watched the video on how to jardiniere, so how to make battens. So the very first thing I would like you to do is get your rice onto boil. You could do more like an absorption method where you're using cold water. You need to add a little bit of salt into your saucepan and the rice will cook eventually. The way that we tell that it's cooked is by checking it in the middle, but first of all, we'll get our rice on. The next thing you need to do is get your chicken on to marinate. Now I've already put my marinade ingredients in here, so I'm just going to cut my chicken up. I'm going to cut it into strips, but the first thing I'm going to do is actually cut it in half. You'll notice that I'm using the yellow board. The reason being is that yellow is generally for chicken or for poultry. So I'm going to cut through the middle first, very carefully, and just makes it a bit quicker. And depending on how you like your stir fry, if you want big chunks, then you can go straight across. If you want them slightly smaller, then you can cut it in half. I'm just going to go fairly thin strips. Now when cutting chicken, you need to cut across the grain. The reason why we do this is the chicken becomes much more tender. If we cut going along with the grain, it gets really chewy and dries out really quickly. The reason why we need to marinate our meat just helps to break down that protein, which helps to tenderize it, which makes it much more palatable, as well as just makes it softer and easier to chew. So we're just going to put it into the marinade. We're going to marinate it for about 20 minutes. To marinate, keep it in the fridge. Chicken is a high risk food, so if we leave it out too long, it can increase the chance of food poisoning, cross-contamination, so we're going to keep it in the fridge, cover it with some cling wrap and let it marinate for 20 minutes. Okay, so before you start cooking your stir fry, what you need to do is prepare all of your vegetables in your jardiniere. So remember your jardiniere of capsicum, your jardiniere of carrot and the jardiniere of celery. Now for your beans, you're just going to cut them to a similar size, but what the recipe asks you to do is to top and tail your vegetables. So the way that you're going to do that is grab your knife. You might find it easier using your paring knife to do this because you have a lot more control over it. Top and tail, all it means is to remove the two ends. So you're just going to go very slowly. As I said, you might find using your paring knife easier for this because you have more control. Just going to take the two ends and the stringy bits off. So that's for your snow peas, and you can either leave them whole or you can just cut them into two. The recipe also asks you to cut your broccoli. We're going to be using cauliflower for today, but you'll be using broccoli to cut it into florets. You can see here the outlines. Now each outline represents a floret. So that's quite a large floret, that's a much smaller one, that's a much smaller one, and that's a much smaller one. So they're your florets. I don't want to see people chopping through the cauliflower because what happens is we break that head of cauliflower apart. So if you do need to cut it up so it's a bit smaller, the way that you do that is you slice from the base. So you're going to slice here from the base of the cauliflower, and then you should be able to just pull it apart like so. For your spring onion, is cutting it into 2 centimetre pieces. Now for your onion, you will be slicing it for your particular recipe, but I'm just going to use some that I brunoised earlier. Okay, so once you've got all your vegetables ready, you can then start cooking. Now remember, stir frying is really high heat, really fast method of cooking. Now we're going to start with our chicken, and we're going to do that first of all, and then we're going to take it out, and then we're going to cook our vegetables, and then we're going to add it back in. Okay, so we're going to separate our chicken from the liquid using what we call a slotted spoon. All right, so once that's in, then make sure you're stirring it. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to cook off the rest of this marinade just a little bit, just to add a little extra flavour into that sauce. Now once that's done, just put it aside into a bowl. Try and get as much of the residue out as possible. so then it doesn't get all over your vegetables. Once you've done that, then you can start adding your vegetables. So the first thing we're going to add is our onion. Reason being is we don't want our onion to be too firm in our stir fry, so we're just going to stir that around. It's going to absorb some of that flavour. Now the point of a stir fry is to keep your vegetables so they stay nice and firm. We don't want to overcook them, so they're going to have that nice crunch to them still. So that is why it's such a fast method of cooking. Okay. So when we look at our vegetables, the idea is to start with the hardest vegetable first. So the vegetable that's going to take the longest to cook, and then we work our way to the softest vegetable, so the vegetable that's going to take least time to cook. So I'm going to start with my cauliflower actually, because it's the biggest and it's going to take a little while to cook. Then I'm going to add in some carrot, because it's probably the next firmest vegetable. You'll notice that with this particular stir fry, it will start to get some black residue on it, and that's okay. Then I'm going to add my beans in. Then I'm going to pop in my celery, then my capsicum. Then I'm going to add my snow peas in. You need 2 tablespoons of water, and you're just going to add that in, and it will sizzle up, but it's just going to add a little bit of moisture to help cook some of those vegetables, just to give them, help them become a little bit softer. All right. And then what we need to do is get some chicken stock. Now the recipe asks you to use half a cup of chicken stock. Now that doesn't mean that you go to the tin of chicken stock and you measure out half a cup. It means half a cup of chicken stock, we get all of our stock in powder form. So our chicken stock comes and it looks like this. Now half a teaspoon of this makes up 1 cup. So that means we're only going to need about 1/4 of a teaspoon of chicken stock to mix with half a cup of water to get that flavour. Now the water needs to be boiling water. We're going to mix that in. All right. Now I'm going to add my chicken back in, and some of that marinade should then be absorbed with the cauliflower. I'm going to add in my chicken stock as well, just to add a little bit more moisture. Stir that through. All right, so we're going to plate it up in a bowl, and I'm just going to show you a little trick for plating up, just to help add height to your dish. What I'm going to do is just put a little bit of rice into my mould, just into that hole. We're just going to put some stir fry on top. Then what we're going to do is slowly lift this mould off. Then I'm going to garnish it just with some sesame seeds and some shallots. And that is how you do a chicken stir fry.